Good morning. This is Erin with the Department of Medicaid. It's not quite 10 o'clock, so we'll give it just a moment before we get started while we clear out the waiting room. Good morning. It is 10 o'clock and our waiting room is clear. I accounted for Wayne, Melanie, and Sherry logging in. Did I miss anybody? Okay. Wayne, if you want to go ahead and start, your waiting room's clear. If you want to give it a moment longer to see if you get a few more members, just let me know.
Yeah, let's give it a couple of minutes and see if Johnny or anybody else logs on so that we can get a quorum. Did you hear me, Aaron?
I'm having a hard time hearing you, but it might just be me.
I can hear you fine, Wayne.
I say I can hear you fine as well.
Same here. This is Melanie Hanger Wilson.
I was saying, let's give it a couple of minutes and see if Johnny or anybody else logs on so we can have a quorum.
I keep an eye out for him. I don't see him as of yet.
Oh, shoot her. She got it all started.
So we don't have a quorum right now, do we?
No, sir.
Yeah, I didn't check her.
And I'm going to have Kelly take over briefly while I work on my speakers. I think it's something on my end.
Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and get started, and we'll bypass the approval of the meeting minutes since we don't have a quorum. We'll go ahead and see if do we have the DCBS representative online, Aaron or Kelly?
Let me check. I'm looking. Hold on just a second. I don't believe we do. Huh. Do we have the DCBS? Yes. What's his name? Scott Denny. Okay. I'm sorry. Yes, we do have him. Scott Denny, can you hear us?
Hey, good morning. Yes, just for clarity, I'm with SSA instead of
SSA.
DCBS.
Okay. Good deal. Good deal. Did you receive a copy of the questions that TAC committee members put together and submitted prior to the meeting?
I did.
Well, the floor is yours. We'll go ahead and let you address those questions then.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to come. Can you hear my audio okay?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Yep. So thank you for inviting me to the meeting. My name is Scott Denny. I'm the district manager with SSA. My district includes an office in Frankfort, Kentucky, and an office in Danville, Kentucky. And in Frankfort, we are the collateral component or the liaison with the state. So we work directly with SSA matters related to the state as it relates to Medicaid or foster care, AE services, benefits, and a host of other issues. So our primary thing that we do is pay benefits to people who are disabled, who are retired, and again, we act in a liaison role with the cabinet in a host of things. The central core of the questions that I saw looked like they were mostly related to the Medicaid waiver program. So this is interesting in that the Medicaid waiver is administered by the cabinet. And I'll give you a brief overview of what that program is and tell you how it affects with SSA. So, and I will be, if you'll excuse me for oversimplifying, the Michelle P. waiver allows Medicaid individuals or Medicaid eligibility for individuals who might not otherwise be financially eligible to them. It's based on a previous lawsuit. But for the cabinet, if they meet the eligibility requirements, they get Medicaid. As it affects Social Security, the primary impact is that SSA will exclude certain types of income for individuals who are on a Medicaid waiver. And to give you a couple of examples how that normally works, let's say that you have a child who has a severe disability. That child might require institutionalization or hospitalization without a caregiver. The Michelle P. waiver allows the parent or a relative to serve as the caregiver in that situation. As far as for SSA, if the individual is serving in that caregiver role, there are a lot of instances where we do not count the income as a caregiver as it relates to financial criteria for eligibility for SSI. So more succinctly, if you have a parent who has a disabled child and they're on the Michelle P. waiver program, we would not count the income from the Michelle P. waiver program for SSI eligibility determination for the child. This can also be adults. You might have someone who is over 18 that has a severe disability, and in those instances, again, we don't count the caregiver income. The program can get more complicated and in the weeds, and I'm happy to answer a few questions about that. The most common situation we see where those rules can be confusing is if the caregiver themselves are receiving financial-based income from SSI, or SSI disability, or if they're on Title II disability. In those instances, we don't exclude the income as wages to the caregiver. We only exclude them as they deem to the child. The actual Michelle P. waiver program, again, is administered through the cabinet. So the eligibility and administration of that program is done through Medicaid. But we work closely with them as far as it relates to administering the program, the income requirements for children. So I think that's the bulk of the questions. I'll pull them up here and make sure that I haven't missed anything, but I'm happy to, in the questions, it said that there were some service issues or questions about Social Security's process that were affecting these. So I'm happy to answer questions about that or questions from anyone for that matter.
The floor is open for questions if anyone wants to ask anything.
Hi, Wayne. I can talk a little bit about this since you asked me to compile these questions, if you would like.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Scott. Thank you so much for being here. My name's Amy Stade. I'm the CEO of the Kentucky Association of Private Providers, and I'm located in Danville, where one of your offices is. So thanks for being here. Just a little background for you. Over the past probably year and a half, have been hearing multiple concerns from parents, providers, guardians, loved ones, etc., about something it's a unique situation that's happening when children who receive services from waiver transition to adulthood. Okay, so when that happens, these kids have to, because they are becoming an adult, right, then have to apply for Social Security, on their own as an adult, right? And what's happening is this application process is often taking over a year to complete. And because of the length of the application process, sometimes the inappropriate denials that are happening, etc., these kids are losing access to waiver services because that SSI, SSDI, I'm not a Social Security expert, so I'm just going to say Social Security so I can encompass all of it, those waiver services hinge on that person qualifying for that Social Security. So during this whole reapplication process, as we're transitioning someone who definitely needs waiver services, has been receiving them, and definitely qualifies for waiver services from childhood to adulthood, the Social Security aspect is the hangup, and people are losing access to really vitally important services and losing their waiver slots. And you probably don't know this because Waiver World is like our own unique kind of bubble, is that when you lose a waiver slot, you have to go back on the wait list. And, for example, you talked a lot about the Michelle P. waiver. Also, similarly, is the Supports for Community Living waiver, which supports the same population. Also, the Home and Community-Based waiver, which sometimes can support similar populations. Those waivers have wait lists. The Michelle P. waiver wait list is extensive and years long. And so the effect of losing one's waiver slot oftentimes can cause a person to lose access to services for not just 30, 60, 90 days, for years on end. And again, what we're hearing is that the hangup is coming with this Social Security application process, transitioning from childhood to adulthood. And I think that that's kind of what the bulk of the concerns we're hearing, and where this kind of conversation. That's the backstory for like necessitating this conversation and extending an invitation here today.
So I'll talk a little bit about the process on our end. If the child is receiving benefits prior to age 18, at or near the age 18 attainment, we do what we call an age 18 redetermination. So basically, up until that point, the child's financial eligibility is based on the income and resources of the parents. We call that a deeming relationship. At 18, we do kind of a financial update to consider them an adult. What are your own financial and income and resources? And do you have anything that would preclude eligibility? At that point, we're required to get an adult medical decision from DDS. So of course, we do a medical update. We call that a continuing disability review. It would be kind of the same process as an adult who periodically their medical conditions are reevaluated. So we do that as kind of one interview process, and then we send the medical decision to DDS for a determination. The children or the adults in this case, they maintain eligibility until that decision is made on our end. So in Kentucky, for an initial disability, Kentucky is kind of in the Atlanta region. If you would, if you're a sports fan, if you would imagine the Southeastern Conference, you know, Kentucky down to Florida and westward to Alabama. Kentucky has one of the best DDS times in the country. You know, on average, you know, initial claims take around 100 days, give or take, for us. But again, the children maintain eligibility during that time. So I guess my question would be, what situations would be where the child would lose their waiver or eligibility in that process? I guess I'm not familiar with that.
Do we have any case managers on here that have dealt with this recently that can offer more specifics? Obviously, I'm kind of from a more broad understanding of this and can't get you down into the weeds. So if there's a case manager that can talk a little bit about this, that would be wonderful.
I'm here, Myra Gribbins, with Reach for the Stars Case Management. We have a case right now for an individual who lives in the Lexington area, and during the COVID, he was supposed to have a redetermination, and some letters got sent to the wrong address, and then they went to reapply. It took almost 3 months, and he's in his early 20s. It took almost 3 months to get an appointment with SSI for the redetermination, and then documents were submitted. And last month, and it's been a year, he's lost his waiver. It's been a year, but we're still providing case management, you know, for over a year, and no reimbursement, but we're still helping. And when they talked to Social Security about a month ago, they said it could take another 200 days, that they're that far
I
behind.
kind of lost your audio there. I don't know if it's just me or not, but I lost you after you said providing case management.
Okay, about a month ago, the case manager and him talked with Social Security, and they said it's going to be at least 200 days before another decision could be made. So he's lost his Michelle P. waiver, and even though he's lost it, we are still involved, but the other services are not involved because they're not getting reimbursed, and they can't send staff to go work with him without, you know, having a funding source. So that's one situation. And then another situation that we run into a lot is if they're coming from foster care, been in therapeutic foster care, and they're aging out of foster care and they're going to be going into SCL waiver. I had someone that it took 1.5 years to get her redetermined. And during that process, she had no income at all, no SSI, no nothing, no income. And in that situation, the agency that had been providing her residential care through foster care continued doing that for 1.5 years. And then after 1.5 years, after several emails and several, going up the ladder to different places, we finally got her approved. And they were owed a year and a half of residential services because they had provided the service with no pay. Now, if that company had said, we can't do it, we're not getting paid, she would have been homeless. And she would have had an intellectual disability, been homeless, and don't know where she would have been. So, and then we're also, you know, we have to continue to provide services just ethically to make sure, you know, people don't fall through the cracks. And some agencies don't do that. But I do see it a lot when there's redeterminations coming up. It's the length of the time that it takes to get the appointment. Like it shouldn't take 3 and 4 months just to get an appointment. When you start in March, then you have an appointment in August, then it gets canceled to September, and then you finally get it in October. So that's some of the situations we've had. And we've had people who've lost their waiver, then we've had to reapply and things like that. But it's mainly the transitioning, like Amy was stating, coming out of either foster care into waiver or just aging out as a child and maybe living with their family.
So for these cases, if I'm hearing you correctly, these individuals maybe because something fell through the cracks or something didn't work like it should, their eligibility was ceased or terminated, and then to go through the process to reestablish eligibility, they weren't able to maintain their waiver service, or they lost the waiver service during that period of time. Am I understanding correctly?
Yes, oftentimes what we do is we will ask for a special circumstance, and Medicaid will give us like another 60 days. And then, but then after that, you know, they can't keep giving us 30 and 60 days. I can't remember what they call it on the Medicaid side. And they tell us it's because they're not SSI eligible. And because they're not SSI eligible, then they can't get Medicaid. And if you don't have Medicaid, then you can't get waiver. One hinges upon the other.
And I'm sure everybody on the call understands when we're layering different organizations and bureaucracies, every situation can be unique in its own right. But I will concede that if the individual isn't able to cooperate or complete the SSI redetermination process before the eligibility terminates, it does create a wrinkle. If we get that up front, they maintain eligibility during this redetermination. If it goes a certain period of time to where the benefits terminate or cease, it ends up kind of being like a brand new application. So there's no eligibility during that. On my end, I can talk to our folks in Kentucky about some reminders about, you know, availability or scheduling these age 18s timely. But if we have a situation where the eligibility terminates, I don't know of a way to expedite that to get a faster decision from DDS or to go through the decision faster. On the issue of individuals aging out from foster care, I would say we're the primary contact for DAFM and for Dale. We talk to folks at adult and child guardianship, you know, several times a week. We've had some issues with that as well. You know, sometimes when the children are in a period of transition, it's tough to catch up to them, to locate them. Sometimes it's hard to get the placement parents to cooperate or understand or trust. But I took some notes on both of those on our end. And for the caseworker there, am I answering any of your concerns or questions?
Well, it's just mainly like, is there not a way that it could be flagged, that these cases could be flagged as waiver cases, and that there is, it's not just like your traditional Medicaid card, someone having a medical card, that this is pending and you know, can affect people's services and their home. And so is there any way that something could be flagged that waiver cases should not take 3 to 9 months to process? And in all of these cases, there's a case manager diligently involved in helping fill out the paperwork, uploading the paperwork, faxing the paperwork, taking the paperwork to the SSI office. So, because we try to stay on top of it as much as possible. I do have a question about the MRT team, because we often hear that the medical review team is where it's held up at, which you may refer to that as a different acronym. Is that the adult decision-making team? Is that the same as the MRT?
Well, to answer both questions about flagging the case and the MRT, this is where the relationship between the cabinet and SSA becomes a little more nuanced and complicated. Because for Social Security, what we do in our office is we take the application, we certify the financial eligibility, and then we send that claim to DDS, to the Department of Disability Services. So the medical decision is completed by a state agency. So as far as flagging the cases, to answer your question more succinctly, I could talk to my DDS contact, but I'm not sure that I could answer questions on their processes. It's something that I'll take back and explore for these,
Suggestion.
you know, and the medical review team, the process once the case gets to DDS, like who examines it and who makes that medical document or determination, I'm not sure that I'm qualified to answer.
Okay. Because that's often we see that as well. They will have this diagnosis and be eligible until they're 18, and then all of a sudden, especially folks who are on the autism spectrum.
Mhm.
And then once they turn 18, it's like, I don't really think that they're disabled anymore. And it's like, well, you don't outgrow autism or Down syndrome and things like that. You know, you may get better, but it's not, so, so that, and I'm unsure like on the MRT, because we never really know who that is. We're just told that it's been sent to the MRT to review. And then we have to do appeals if they feel like that they do not meet the eligibility from that angle.
Mhm. Well, I would answer here if you'll excuse me if I'm not precise, if I'm a little clumsy here, but up until 18, the medical determination for children is based upon, their daily activities, their developmental milestones, where they are in relation to their peers, how that affects their ability to care for themselves. When you get to the 18 and the adult decision, there's a whole nother universe over here at DDS where we're evaluating your ability to be gainfully employed.
Mhm.
So what happens is children who have a condition like you mentioned early on, the criteria in which DDS uses to evaluate, is this child disabled? It's very different than the criteria for an adult. And so what happens when they hit 18, they have to be evaluated under the adult criteria. The way that it's supposed to work, if you're on SSI, is my office contacts them early in the process to do the financial review. We get this stuff to DDS, they make a medical determination. We continue to pay SSI in the interim until that adult decision is issued. If that adult decision is a cessation, they can ask for a continuance of those benefits while they work their way through the appeals process. That starts with a reconsideration at DDS. It escalates to a decision in front of an administrative law judge, and then ultimately can go to an appeals council in federal court. What happens is if the case is not continued timely, and that can be for a number of reasons. If the child or their representative doesn't respond in a timely manner, if things fall through the cracks, we can still continue those benefits while we do the decision, but we have to make a good cause determination. What was the reason why you didn't pursue this timely? And, what reason do you give us for wanting to pursue now? And SSA can continue those benefits during those periods. It just requires an additional step of an administrative process on our part. So again, to go back to where we started, for the cases that don't cease or terminate at 18, those should be going right through the process with no interruption of benefits. For the cases that do have a cessation of benefits or a stop or an interruption, I think it's going to be important to work with the local office to see, can we pursue these benefits to be paid while we're working through this appeal process? And there's a couple of different forms or things that you can do at those steps to continue the benefits. If I'm understanding correctly, that would resolve a lot of the issues with the waiver, right? Because the benefits would be continuing.
Scott, we have a question in the chat. It says, how far in advance can a person apply for benefits before their 18th birthday?
Well, as an adult decision, typically we would do those anywhere from 90 days before to 90 days after. That's generally our target. Those benefits don't stop until we take action to initiate the process. If the child is on SSI, then it should be automatic. The servicing office should be sending paperwork to them that, hey, this is going to terminate at age 18. This is what we need to do to continue the benefits, and there's a few forms that we fill out. If the child is not receiving SSI, if they're Title II only, meaning they're receiving a benefit off their parent or a survivor benefit, we can take that application in the 3rd month prior to their birthday. So 90 days is kind of a good rule of thumb. And like I said before, generally DDS time is at or just above 100 days in Kentucky. So if we're doing that, generally we can get a decision back, roughly around the time. The redeterminations of eligibility, those go through a special unit at DDS, and that might be what you're referring to as the MRT. So I'm not up to date with DDS staffing. It could be that staffing in that unit is low. In times past, when I've worked in other states, and this was especially true in Tennessee, the examiners that were doing redeterminations required a higher level of expertise and training, so there were fewer of them. And sometimes that could create some bottlenecks in the system. There were a limited number of reviewers working these cases because they're more complex than an initial determination.
I've seen a question from Rachel at DMS. She had her hand up twice. I never did get a call on her. Rachel, did you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Wayne. I appreciate that. Sorry, Amy and Scott, you all had brought up way back in the beginning there, asking for an example. And so to look at the DMS eligibility side, I wanted to shed some light on that. So what Amy's talking about isn't someone that is a child on SSI and then has to go through being an adult on SSI. The issue is when the child is on Medicaid and the type of assistance based on disability from the medical review team. So say they are eligible for Medicaid and the CHL3 type of assistance. That's where their eligibility falls. Well, that supports waiver services. They're good to go. Or if it's in the ABDM type of assistance, MRT has determined them disabled, they're good to go and receive those services. Now that they are transitioning into an adult, our policy requires that they now have to apply for SSI for a disability determination based on being an adult. So that transition, I think, is kind of where we're going, where there can be hiccups. And it can be where it's smoothly receiving, before that, and then that interim. But I will tell you on the eligibility side, that child does not lose eligibility. It goes to a different type of assistance, kind of like a placeholder. And it's called the ADLT type of assistance. The problem with that is that it does not support waiver services. So they do have Medicaid. It's a placeholder. It's waiting. But until SSI makes that determination, they're going to keep having that ADLT type of assistance. So it seems like during that transition might be an example of what Amy was referring to.
So these may be individuals who don't receive SSI as a child, or
Correct.
yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So
All
they're
right.
receiving Medicaid coverage based on disability by the medical review team. So this is before Social Security ever gets involved. This is, they come in to apply for Medicaid. Hey, I also need waiver. Okay, you're eligible for all of that. Okay, now that you're 18, that MRT disability, we can't go off of that. Then, based on policy, now that you are an adult, you have to apply for SSI. So it's that
All right.
transition between the two that I think is maybe problematic because the Medicaid that they have in the interim doesn't support waiver services.
That's very helpful.
Okay.
So we may be talking about and y'all, I apologize if I'm clumsy with the chat. We are a MS Teams organization. I don't have Zoom, so I've got my phone propped up on a stack of books. So if it looks a little homemade as I'm working through the chat, excuse me. So we may be talking about individuals who their parents' income or resources are too high for SSI. They're on Medicaid waiver. They're approaching 18. Now they have to get an adult decision to maintain waiver eligibility. And the process to get that determination is really affecting their ability to get waiver services. Am I hearing that right?
That's it exactly from my point of view. And Amy and everyone on here, if that's not correct, please correct me. But that was the view as you were talking. That is a common scenario.
Yes,
Okay.
Rachel, thank you for explaining that much better than I could. I really appreciate
You're
it.
good. You're good. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Myra again. Yes, when people are out of the Medicaid waiver, as Rachel mentioned, they may go from being Medicaid eligible waiver, and then for some reason, something will happen, and they go over to either what are the optimum choice is what we need for waiver. And then what are the other two? Global, and then there's comprehensive. And global and comprehensive Medicaid will not pay for waiver, only optimum choice. And so that's where the DMS and the SSI, sometimes where we see folks get moved from one Medicaid waiver, from one Medicaid plan to another one, kind of like a MCO or so forth.
You're hitting it right on the head, Mark, because that's what I'm talking about, the type of assistance changing. The type of assistance automatic, it is parallel with that benefit plan. So when it drops to ADLT while they're applying for SSI, yes, they're going to have Medicaid, but that benefit plan is going to change, and that benefit plan doesn't allow billing for waiver. So that's it exactly.
Right.
Okay.
And we can look that up on the website and see the date when those change over. And oftentimes it's the end of the month, on the last day of the month. Like I guarantee you today, if I go in and look up people, they have been changed for some reason from optimum choice to either comprehensive or global. And then as a case manager, we have to start digging and figuring out why did they lose their Medicaid waiver eligibility? And there's a number of reasons why they could have lost it.
All right. That's extremely helpful to me. You know, at a glance, I'll say this. Well, I'll just try to be succinct. In my role, you're often coordinating with multiple stakeholders to try to negotiate something. What I'm hearing is, can we find some way to identify these waiver cases and prioritize them because of the need? And I would say, to answer to you on the call, possibly. But I'll have to go back to my folks. I'll have to go to my folks at DDS. Well, this is something we'll have to take back for discussion, but this is extremely helpful to me to understand which individuals are being affected. And while I'm responding to that, I see a comment in the chat from Alice. It basically says that, is there a way to streamline the process? The person's already been deemed to have a disability that will continue through their lifetime. The eligibility criteria has already been established through the waiver application process to continue indefinitely. Can the process be streamlined? For that, we get a little deeper into the Social Security Act, the legislation that finances benefits. And again, to be succinct, for those children, it requires they be evaluated under the adult criteria. And we don't really go through that process until they turn 18. There's no need. But as far as streamlining that process, they'll still always have to get an adult decision.
Hey, Scott, you mentioned, is there a way to identify these individuals in advance? And on your end, that may be incredibly difficult, but I can tell you on the provider end, we can flag them. Obviously, I don't want to put more work on any provider, but it's apparent, providers know when this could become an issue, right? And if there could even be a way that, we can say, hey, this person needs to be prioritized, and have you all be able to flag that internally or recognize that we've flagged that for you. I think even that could be incredibly helpful. Because again, I think someone mentioned, and I know that you understand this, is that when we're talking about this kind of eligibility and criteria, someone can lose their home. And, that is incredibly difficult. Again, we've heard of situations where providers have, had to support someone at, zero reimbursement 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for a year. And that's incredibly costly, and not all providers have the ability or means to do that. And so again, even if waiver recipients could self-flag, would be helpful. If that would help you out at all. Again, I don't know what your processes are. And Rachel, you mentioned by policy, which I'm assuming relates back to some sort of federal requirement, individuals have to be SSI eligible. I'm paraphrasing here. Is there anything that, can we take a look at that policy? Is there any way that policy could be amended or strengthened or clarified while still, I'm assuming, being in line with all the federal rules related to waiver eligibility and state rules, to try to prevent some of this from happening? Because it seems like, again, I think everyone knows that this is happening and everybody wants to fix it. It's just some sort of hang up in the process that keeps, that just keeps happening. Unfortunately, is there anything but in the policy we could look at? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, absolutely. It's on the website. It's out there, but I'm going to put it in the chat on exactly, the policy manual is quite large, to go exactly to where it is. And I think that'll help just to see the process from us to SSA and how that is supposed to flow. So I'll go ahead and put that in the chat.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Any other questions for Scott? Anybody? Well, Scott, it looks like you're off the hook.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I took lots of notes. I'll go back to my state director. I'll talk to my DDS liaison. This will be at the top of my agenda and I appreciate you inviting me on, and I appreciate you making me aware and letting me be a part of the process.
Well, on behalf of the TAC, Scott, we appreciate your participation. Aaron, I see Brad's on the call now. Do we have a quorum yet? Or
I was just going to let you know that Brad and Frankie have both joined us.
Good.
We should have a quorum.
All right, let's go back up and grab the approval of the August minutes. Does anybody want to make a motion for that?
I'll make a motion.
All right. Anybody second it?
I'll second.
Good deal. Any opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. The next item up for discussion is an update on the public comments, the themes. That's a DMS response. Anyone from DMS on the call that wants to respond to that?
Hey, Wayne, it's Alicia, and I'm on here for Leslie today. She was double booked, so I'll be providing the responses from Medicaid.
Well, welcome, Alicia.
Well, good morning. So first, the public comments. Most of the comments were related to, I would say, increasing rates, about the previous rate study. Again, rate parity between Are you all getting feedback or is it just me?
Yeah, somebody's still got their mic on. Can we mute everybody, Aaron, except for me and Alicia?
I'm working on it. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
All right, we'll try this again just to make sure everybody heard. The comments were mostly related to increasing rates, the rate study, along with rate parity between waivers. Now, there were several comments that we received that were not related to the amendment of the rates. And then just to let you all know, the responses, we expect those to be posted within the next couple of days to our website. And of course, the amazing Kelly will send all that out when those are posted. And then we need to obviously submit the amendments to CMS to work on getting those approved.
Any questions regarding that?
I had a couple, Wayne.
Sure, go ahead.
Hey, Alicia.
Morning.
You may not know the answers to these, and that's totally fine. Totally understand. A couple of things, and we talked about this in our public comments. In the middle of the public comment period, the rate study document was replaced without notice. Stakeholders weren't notified, and stakeholders who submitted comments before that document was replaced didn't have the opportunity to comment, or didn't necessarily have the opportunity to comment on the new document because there was no notice. And I wondered if the public comment period would be extended to accommodate that.
And sorry, I'm making notes as well.
Okay.
So
Okay.
just to make sure that I am able to answer your questions on what I know. But so the rate study document, I believe what you're saying is the versions were replaced. There was, as you know, that really the version 3 is the final version. And the comment period it did end on September the 3rd. Yeah, we're in October. Sure, time's flying. September the 13th.
So I guess our comment to that is, and again, I totally understand that you're not going to be able to give me an answer, but just noting, I guess our response to that would be when the rate study, the public comment period notice was posted September 12th, 14th, sometime, whatever day that was in September. Version 2 of the rate study was the document that was posted. It was available and online for at least half of the rate study. Individuals reviewed and submitted public comments based upon version 2. Then version 3 was uploaded and replaced version 2. The problem is that stakeholders weren't notified. So if individuals had already reviewed and submitted their public comments, they weren't notified that they weren't reviewing, that there was a new document to review that they should comment on, and didn't get the opportunity necessarily to submit public comments. Also that, there was a disparity between the two versions. There was 4 pages that were missing from version 2 to version 3. And we just, think that people should have been notified and an explanation given as to why those documents were different. So again, completely understand that you can't necessarily comment on that, but just noting for the record. Additionally, I think we pointed out, and again, I'm just noting these things for the record, don't expect you to have answers or comments, that unfortunately the rate study contained some inaccuracies. For example, there were assertions made that wages were inflated to certain time periods, and those inflation adjustments just frankly didn't happen. And again, all of this is outlined in our public comments, but we have concerns that some of the assumptions and assertions made in the rate study document, specifically as it pertains to inflation adjustment, wages, et cetera, just were not didn't actually happen. And again, like I said, you don't have to respond, but those are just noted for the record.
Thank you, Amy. And what I can tell you is version 2 was a draft version. Version 3 is the final version. And for transparency, it is still out there on the website for anybody to take a look at.
Anybody else got any other questions for Alicia on that particular topic?
Oh, I have one more question. Historically, when you all issue your response to the public comments, that coincides kind of simultaneously with submitting those documents to CMS. Is that going to be the process that's followed this year? Do we anticipate a delay in submitting it to CMS? Just wondering about timing.
So just to make sure I understand your question correctly, are you talking about the responses to be posted on the website?
Yes.
And the submissions to CMS kind of corresponding together?
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, that is the plan. And so within the next couple of days, the plan is to have the responses to public comment post on the website and us also submitting to CMS the waiver applications, the amendments.
Thank you. Got it.
Any other questions on that particular topic?
Frankie has his hand raised, Wayne.
Go ahead, Frankie.
I did have a question regarding the rate study for providers. Because I'm on the Employment First Council, and they were talking about it, how there's waiver services for supported employment. But my question regarding that is, someone might have a better point of view too, is there's two different ways to get OER services. And one is like what I do to the government, and then you can get it to the waiver. So one of the questions I had about that is, if anybody's able to speak about that, is why, if you can get services a different way, why the waiver provides supported employment as well.
So Frankie, thank you for your question. And I'm not sure if we have anybody on here for DDID that could add a little more context, but just to keep this kind of high level, can you all still hear me? Okay, because every once in a while I will put my hand or my elbow on my button here and it will actually mute me, but it doesn't show me muted on the screen. So, so the employment, supported employment services, if waiver is always going to be the last, I'll say last resort, the payer of last resort. If something is available through state plan or through another opportunity like OVR, those are gonna come first. But there are times that all those funds have been exhausted and then waiver would pick up and then reimburse for those services. I don't know. I know Crystal's on here. I don't know if you want to add. I don't think we have Jeff White on here.
No, I mean, I think that's the basic explanation, is that it's to cover those individuals after they've been exhausted from those OVR and other supports who need a more long-term ongoing support. And that's why there's those two different funding sources. And if there's any deeper questions, then that's certainly where I could probably get Jeff to speak to that in more detail in the future.
So Frankie, if you had a specific question or, you know, a specific case or something like that that you needed us to take back to Jeff to look into, we'll be more than happy to do that if it needed to go any more in depth.
So it sounds like it just takes over, like once the OBR funds are exhausted.
Then we would look to waiver.
Okay, and then I have one other question regarding that. If it's okay, I don't mean to get off topic, but I keep getting different answers as well. Is there somebody one day that can possibly call me or meet with me to find out what could be covered on the waiver once OVR funds are exhausted? If that
Yeah.
makes
Crystal, would we be able to have Jeff give him a call?
Yes, absolutely. Just somebody could just make sure that either Alicia or I have the correct contact information, then I'll make sure that Jeff reaches out.
Crystal, this is
right.
Erin. I can email that to you right after the meeting.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. I did not want him to give any personal information since I know these are recorded and posted. So I appreciate that. So Frankie, we'll get your information from Erin. Erin will give that to Crystal and we'll get Jeff or somebody to reach out to you about your specific questions.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on that particular topic?
Wayne, this is Melanie. I wonder if I could be a part of that conversation as well.
Melanie, if it's about Frankie's personal information, you most likely can't be a part of that. But if you have questions, we can get those over to Crystal and have those answered.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, the next agenda item is the update on involuntary terminations, the survey that we talked about several meetings ago. This is actually an issue, Alicia, where we were talking about doing a survey, and DMS was looking at that prior to Pam leaving. So we're just asking for an update on where that is and what the progress is on that.
So, Wayne, what I would ask is, since there has been a transition in management, if you all could provide a little more context, exactly what you're looking for, what questions you have, and then I can get with the DDID team with Crystal and her staff to see what information, if we already have that we could provide you all, or just because since I'm kind of coming in to this new with Leslie, just so we have exactly what the questions are, what you're looking for. If you could provide that in writing, that would be helpful.
Absolutely.
Alicia, I think Rick sent that right before he left being the chair. So Wayne, if you would like me to double check my records to save you some time, I should be able to get that to Alicia.
That'd be great.
And just to add to that, Rick did circulate a draft of questions, and I believe there were some edits to that. So, Aaron, etc. I will also go through my email to make sure we're all working off the same draft and forward that to the members of the TAC just to ensure we've captured the most updated version. But for context, Alicia, there has been this conversation related to particularly residential services and 30-day notices. And those individuals who residential providers have stated that they just do not have the ability to support because their needs are in excess. But then obviously the referral process just taking an incredible length of time. And obviously it's been something that we've been talking about for years, and the tax idea was to send out a provider survey to case managers and residential providers to really dig down in the data and capture the data so we can get a really good idea of how many people are involved, and that can inform decision making, next steps forward, etc.
So if you're looking for specific numbers, I do know that those are being tracked. So that is something that, and I don't know if Crystal has anything she wants to add right now, But
Yeah, I would
if
say we have started, we have been, I'd say for now, probably the last year, we started probably about a year ago, when Elizabeth Markle and I came into our positions, to start tracking that information. I think for what's important for us is just to know what is the specific information that you want on that. If it's not something that we already have in what we're tracking, then we can go back and get that specific information and add that. And then that's something that as we go in, we can have updated information and report on regularly. We just need to know specific what parameters of data, what information you want us to gather, because we are gathering that data. And as long as we have that included, then we can give that information out, and probably in a more accurate fashion. If you're just surveying all providers, that may not be. We can get into the actual specific cases that we know have happened and give very specific data on dates and times and things like that, if we know what you all would like to know. So, whatever specific information you're wanting to be tracked and reported on is just what we want to see, and see if it's anything we're not tracking, so that we can go ahead and start getting that gathered.
Perfect. So it may be possible that all of the questions that were proposed in the survey, you all have the ability to answer. Possibly.
Yes, or we
could
yeah.
program to answer, and maybe we could even see. Again, I'm not going to overpromise on your end, but it's certainly within the realm of possibility that maybe some data reports could happen at the next TAC meeting.
Yeah, depending on what information you're looking for, it may take us a little bit to gather it if we're having to go back into some of the older cases and pull some of that. But once we get it together for you, we'd be happy to let you know, based on the information that you're requesting, what data we've been able to pull together on it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good. Very helpful. Thank you. The next agenda item is update.
Frankie had, sorry,
I'm
Wayne.
sorry.
Frankie has his hand raised.
Oh, thanks for pointing that out, Aaron. I didn't catch it. Go ahead, Frankie.
Sorry, I just have one other question. I can wait until that time. I don't know when appropriate time would be, but I did have one other comment for I'm sorry, it takes me a minute to get my words out for Leisha, regarding the I think it's called PDS now. I didn't know when would be a good time to speak about that.
Frankie, if you want to go ahead and ask your question, I think that's okay with everybody.
Okay. I don't know if it would be good to possibly bring up at the waiver redesign again, but I just know from people that I've seen, I know a lot of people have mixed feelings on this, because I've had to do them before for a job, and it's a lot to do. But right now, like people we hire only have to do the college or direct supports when they first get hired. I was wondering if anybody ever thought about them possibly having to do that more than once.
So you're asking or recommending that individuals have training in some cases more than just the first time that they're brought on to be your employee, like maybe yearly or something, or more frequent?
Right. Like, I know a lot of people have mixed feelings about this because it's a lot, because I've had to do them for my job before. I do think it's important for a lot of people to have those more than once.
Okay. And so what I will ask, we can definitely take that back anytime and you want to submit, public comments. We do have the Medicaid public comment mailbox that you can submit to. I think Kelly's on here, so I believe, you know, in order to help you out, we can just send an email to you and confirm that is what your recommendations are. But as we continue to look at waivers, we're always looking at ways to improve them for our participants, right? So I think it's very important that employees are well versed and well trained to meet needs of our participants. So we definitely will take your feedback. And what I'll do is I'll have Kelly write this up and send it to you so you can respond back that we do have the correct understanding. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frankie.
Does anybody else have any other questions before I move on? Okay, the next agenda item is the update on the technical assistance document, the waiver changes from May of 2024.
So I'm not sure who put this on there. I was wondering if you could give us a little more context. I know I met with Kelly trying to figure out maybe exactly what document, so we could pinpoint what you're looking for. I'm not sure who put this one on there.
It was me. So, and this is something that I had honestly forgotten about, but I've actually had several people ask me about it recently. So rewind to last November, October sometime, we submitted waiver amendments to make permanent some of the Appendix K changes. Those amendments were approved and became effective May 1st. Was it May 1st? Somewhere around. Yeah. So they became effective May 1st when Appendix K officially ended. There were some, obviously we made some Appendix K things permanent. There were things like that. But what happened after that is that DMS got a bunch of questions asking to clarify things. And at that point, either DDID or DMS or both said, we're coming out with like a FAQ, technical assistance, some sort of document addressing the questions they had been getting related to the amended waivers. And I just didn't know. And honestly, like I said, it was something that I had forgotten about. So I didn't know if that was sitting, you know, in draft form someplace, and maybe we could just put it out there to point people to if they had questions, etc.
So let me follow up on that. To be honest, I'm not sure. So I've already made my notes here. Let me follow up on that. Because definitely, you know, any information, we want it to be current. And if there's needed to be FAQs out there, we'll definitely look at doing that. Obviously, you know, Appendix K did end as of 4:30, 5/1, the new waivers were effective and live. So is that something that I can get back with you all on? Okay. Thank you, Amy. Sorry, I wasn't sure exactly what we were talking about. So I was like looking for like a specific document out there and was like, okay, I'm kind of felt like I was going down a rabbit hole. I was like, I'm just going to need to get more information.
And Alicia,
Yeah, that's fine.
I sent you the thread, I think last week,
Okay.
on that of what those specific questions and stuff were. And I think Kelly was on that email too.
Okay.
So you'll be able to find that, and that'll let you know the specific ones that we were talking about. And I think we had some answers drafted. It just needed to get
to be blessed.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And when she said that, I was like vaguely thinking. So I think it's kind of bringing my memory back. I slept since then. So, but thank you, Crystal, and I'll definitely look at my emails on that and get with Kelly.
Good, good. Any other questions before we move on? Next thing up is an update regarding the waiting list for the waiver programs.
So here's what I have as of today, this morning. And so just to let you all know, again, the numbers are fluid, right? If I go back in there now, they're probably going to be different than they were this morning, different than yesterday. And also the first numbers that I'm going to give you are, you know, they're not unduplicated, right? We have a lot of people on multiple waivers and that kind of stuff. So just to kind of run through some information here. Let's see, I think I've got a typo on my numbers. I think that should be 13,115 total number of people that are on one or more waiting list as of this morning. And 38.7, so basically 39% of those individuals do have a current allocation for a waiver. And then to get into specifics, in HCB, there's 2,165 total number of individuals on that waiting list. And 9 currently have allocation of another waiver. So there's like 5 in SEL, there's 2 in Michelle P, and 2 in Model 2 of that waiting list. For Michelle P waiver, we have 9,171 individuals on the waiting list. There's 1,333 of these individuals are on one or more other waiting list. That gives us about 32% of those numbers do have an allocation for a waiver, including we have 401 individuals that are already in SEL. We have 4 in ABI, 2 in ABI acute. We have 2,490 in HCB and 1 in Model 2. For SCL, we have 3,535 total number of people on that waiting list. 61%, which is like 2,171, do have a current allocation for a waiver. So we have 1,674 that are already in Michelle P. We have 494 that are receiving services in HCB and 3 individuals receiving services in ABI. And then just some additional breakdown into the IDD population. So there's 10,949 total number of people either on the SEL waiting list, Michelle P waiver waiting list, or both of those waiting lists. And there's 2,075 individuals with one or more of the IDD waivers while on the waiting list for the other IDD waiver. So there's 401 on the Michelle P waiver waiting list that have SEL waiver, and 1,674 on the SCL waiting list that have Michelle P waiver. I know that was a lot of numbers that I threw at you all. So to kind of, I wanted to break that down, but for the total of each, I'll just run through the total. For HCB, there's 2,165. Michelle P waiver, there's 9,171. SCL, there's 3,535. Again, those are not unduplicated. So we've got several that are on multiple waiting lists.
Good deal. Any
Frankie,
questions?
did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just curious because I know there was when I got on SCL, like 5 years ago, maybe longer. There was a waiting list for the emergency SCL at some point. At one point, is there still a waiting list for the emergency?
There is nobody on the emergency waiting list. So we do have open slots currently, and anybody that is submitted in a, deemed to meet the emergency criteria, we go ahead and are able to give them a slot at this time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Wayne, we skipped one of the items, the 50% with the pass-through. Can we go back?
Yeah. Thanks for pointing that out.
Thank you. And this Alicia, may be addressed in the pending FAQ technical assistance document that may be coming. So, and I understand that you may not be able to give this to me an answer, but when we made the options in the Appendix K permanent, some of them permanent, one of those things were those 50% add-on with the 85% pass-through that were for essentially like one-on-one personal care type services. I'm lumping them in under that general descriptor. So I had a new provider reach out to me recently and ask how they could bill that. And so I went to pull the guidance and the attestation document and send that to them, and that was no longer available online. And I reached out to Medicaid, maybe it was Kelly. I'm sorry, I can't remember who I reached out to. But the answer I received was that 50% add-on is only available to providers who originally elected it and not to new providers, which this kind of all relates to the rate study too, because in the rate study, it's represented that, that would be available to any providers who provide that service. And I guess my question is, one, is that true? And two, if so, that puts new providers at a significant disadvantage because again, because of that 85% pass through, it really goes to wages of that direct care worker. Those new providers automatically, because they don't have access to to elect that add-on, cannot pay their employees, those direct care workers, as much as providers who existed, then. So I just hoped that that was something that Medicaid could take a look at and consider changing their stance on, so that, all providers continue to have the option to do that.
So from my understanding, the Appendix K, that was all like temporary, right? During COVID, we were having a hard time finding workers. And so there was this 50%. And obviously Appendix K has ended. And what I have received direction on is that the 50%, the attestation in order to provide that 50% was for that current period and will not be for new providers.
I guess I would just comment that we did make that 50% permanent. That is in our waivers, right? So that is that was made permanent, and it was represented to CMS that would be available to all providers. And again, that puts new providers at a significant disadvantage. They won't be able to hire employees if they can't pay them as much. And existing providers who elected that are able to pay significantly more because of that add-on. I'm not advocating that add-on go anywhere, because it shouldn't, but it should be available to all providers. So again, I know that you can give me answers on that.
Yeah,
but
I can't. The only thing that I can speak to is that when you say it was made permanent, is, we had to put it in the waivers in order until we finished the rate study and got this move in, or basically everything would have been taken back to day one. And everybody would have lost, a significant amount of money, right? So in order for us not to just cut that off and be like, sorry, we had to put that in the waivers. So I appreciate your comments, Amy. I've taken note here. Obviously, I'll request that Deputy Commissioner Hoffman go back and review our meeting as well.
Any other questions?
Frankie?
I have a comment on that as well. When she was saying that if they don't get as much, it's hard to hire somebody. I do know for PDS, it went up to a pretty good amount, but I don't know if it's just because of the labor shortage, but it's been real hard to find people. So I was just curious if Medicaid's been looking at that as well to see what they can do to help find more people to work, if that makes sense.
So Frankie, I think you're talking maybe a little bit differently. The 50% add-on was for the traditional providers. Are you just talking about rates in general?
Yeah.
Okay. And so what I can tell you is, the rate study was done. And that information was put into the waiver applications, but no one is going to lose any amount of money. There are some services that are going to be increased, and others will remain the same.
Right. I just didn't know, because I know it's been hard for providers to find people, and PDS as well. So I was just curious if, I don't know if the pay increase is the answer, but I was just curious if Medicaid is looking into what they can do to find more people for like the providers or people in general.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, that definitely makes sense. We understand that there is a workforce shortage, and we are always looking at ways on how to increase employees within our waiver programs.
Okay.
Any other questions on that? Okay, the next agenda item is update from DMS regarding the outlook for 14C programs.
Do we know who put this one on there? Is that you, Amy?
No, it was Sherry.
I did it.
Oh, hey, Sherry.
Hi.
Could you give me a little more information about this, or what the specific question is?
Are they wanting to do away with that 14C program where they get hang on, where they get money for individuals who would not get actual, minimum wage payments, that would get a lower wage? Are they trying to do away with that program?
This is probably something that I can't speak on. I have not been involved in any conversations regarding 14C programs.
Because I know from other states and stuff that they're getting information where they're wanting to do away with that. And I know that we have 22 companies that do 14C program.
So you said you've received other information from other states that they're doing away with those?
But that's in looking into the fields on doing that, yes. Arkansas is one of the big ones that I get information from.
You said they're passing bills on that?
They're wanting to pass a bill to do away with that.
Okay.
That's what they are telling me from Arkansas.
I'm not aware of anything currently, but that doesn't mean that something, won't pop up for us to review or to take a look at.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
The next agenda item is the update regarding DMS outlook for funding ICFs.
Do we know who added that one, Wayne?
Sherry.
Sherry added that. What did you have a specific question around funding for ICFs?
Well, I know that a lot of these providers are talking about that they are getting extra funding from years past and things. Is ICF getting the same amount of increases? Are they getting increase along with other providers?
That I am not familiar with. I think that's something, Aaron, that we would need to ask back to our financial department. And so you're saying that you've heard they're getting extra funding and you're wondering if that's true?
I'm asking, are they getting any other funding for to help pay wages for employments or anything? Or are they getting the same kind of increases that the individuals are that do supported community living or home basis that other providers are getting?
So you're asking through our rate study and stuff, we've done a rate study to increase our wages. Has something been done on that side?
Yeah.
Okay. So the funding for waivers is probably a little bit different than, I would say, funding for the ICFs. That is definitely not my area of expertise on how that is funded. So if it's possible, we can get Aaron to send something to our finance department, or if they need to be on for our next meeting, we could definitely request them. And I'm saying that in not knowing if anybody from our finance team is on here. So if there's somebody from the department of our finance team that is on here and can speak to that, please definitely speak up. But if not, we can definitely take that back.
So the next ones down there, they're all me. Anything that's related with ICFs would be from me, because we never talk about them on this TAC committee.
Okay. Yeah, I think there was, I think that you had also requested some information, some data request from ICF.
Yeah.
Aaron, do you want to speak on that?
I do, Sherry. I was also going to let you know I can forward the email you sent me about all the ICFs over to our fiscal team and get you an answer on that.
Okay.
I did actually go ahead and do the data request. However, with it being a TAC item, I do just need the TAC to present this in a meeting so that it's an official data request. I should have that data back soon to have it overlooked and approved to send out to the TAC soon. But with it being TAC driven, we just can't do private business, not in our public forum. So I just need the TAC to approve the data request.
Why would this be?
And I can get that out soon.
I guess that's my question to that is, why would this be any different than an ICF being different than the SCL's waivers?
Hey, Sherry, I can answer some questions about that. I know enough to be dangerous. Obviously, I don't work for the cabinet, so I do not want to speak on their behalf.
Right.
But ICFs, they operate off contracts with the state. So those contracts are bid on like through the RFP process, and individual companies that manage the public ICFs. I'm not going to also speak on behalf of private ICFs.
Right.
They're completely different. But so if I was a company that wanted to, submit a bid to manage an ICF, I would outline how much I'm going to do that for and how much, my per diem would be that I would charge to the state. And those, go through the contracting process. The state has a very solid procurement process that they follow. But essentially, those contracts can contain, and the companies propose how much they're going to do it for. So the rate structure is not at all the same as it is or similar to how waivers reimbursed. Again, those are contracts that companies put out for themselves and say, I'm going to use round numbers here. So these are not at all representative, I'm sure, of what the contracts are, but I, Amy State, am going to manage, Oakwood, and I'm going to do it for $100 a person a day. Do you like this proposal, state of Kentucky? Or, do you like someone else's proposal better? And they have specific, contract review processes that way above my head that they look at. But again, it's not a rate structure like it is with waiver. Those are all managed through contracting, et cetera.
Thank you. That does help me, because I did not know that answer. Okay.
So what do you need us to do, Aaron, for her to get the numbers that she's requesting here, just to make that a motion and approve it?
Yeah, it's just a formal request to the open TAC. So that way we're all within our open records guidelines.
Okay, is anyone that is on the formal TAC oppose the agenda items that are listed there as the data request for the ICF information? Okay, the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wayne.
You're welcome. Any other questions regarding anything on the agenda as we're in our closing discussion and remark stage of the meeting? No questions? Well, on behalf of the TAC, I'd like to thank the DMS representatives and the cabinet representatives that spoke on behalf of the cabinet itself during the meeting, and also big thanks to Scott from SSA that attended and provided some useful information earlier. And we will go ahead and adjourn and see you guys in December. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne.